It is great to be back up north here in the Snake Range today, northern end of it. It's the first day of yo-yo traverse, you could call it, of the Snake Range. Gonna walk to the southern end in the most expeditious manner possible, taking lower trails basically when possible, and roads for that matter. Mount Moriah there, the distance, is one of the higher peaks of this range, and it's actually aloof from the crest. So Mount Moriah tomorrow will represent an exception to walking expeditiously through lower trails and such. When I hit the southern end, I will stay to the ridge as much as possible. Could be some cliffy sections, I'm not sure yet, but we'll find out together. And the true crest to the west of Moriah there is lower than Moriah, but still quite high. It's not visible at the moment though, it's above those foothills. Be coming back that way. Looks like a pretty dry and hot place, probably, from a vantage point, but it's really not that bad. Definitely dried out, but fairly mild temperatures. This is going to be a nice walk through the north in that sense. Always like cooler temperatures than hotter temperatures. Someone else is out here. Didn't see anyone driving out here, and it's the 4th of July actually, so that's how remote this place is. Did see people at the national park, Great Basin National Park that is, of course, entrance point at Baker. A few tourists out during the pandemic, but it was pretty deserted for a holiday weekend, I've got to say, with the recent outbreaks and stay-at-home orders and closing of bars and such across much of the warm part of the country now, as people are indoors in the air conditioning and such. Hypothesis is that Corona will hit the north in the fall, and then it'll ease here in the Sun Belt, as they say, towards the fall as people start going outdoors again. The north, when people start retreating for the winter indoors, I think they're going to be in pretty bad shape, unfortunately. But pinyon-juniper, sagebrush zone here. None of these organisms have any concern or care about human affairs, human diseases. They probably just wish we'd go away altogether. The horses definitely wish so. I'm trying to keep it as light and fast as possible this time. Nonetheless, we'll be out here a good week at least. Could be upwards of 9 or 10 days. Really depends on what trails and roads work where and such. Definitely some rugged parts of this range. I mean, look at Moriah just standing out there above everything, for example. So we'll have some big elevational changes within and across days. Hopefully a lot more flowering plants higher up, because as you can see, first week of July is already toast in these parts. It's always some kind of dramatic situation that develops on any extended trip. Drama may be minor, may be major. Shoes are often the focus of such drama, and the top of my shoe is beginning to dissociate. So there's a couple fixes for it. I've already anticipated it a little bit, but nonetheless, it's rather horrible to maybe have it happen as early as today or tomorrow. It's really feeling pretty loose down there. So I put an old crappy pair of shoes, my very last stash, but that's obviously some days ahead of me. Could even be a week from now. So that's the drama that's already developing in the Snake Range. Mount Moriah, and the final day coming back looks pretty alright. It's a bit of a dip there, but otherwise it looks fairly flat up there. Probably replete with horse trails. Could be a road up there, who the heck knows. Random roads everywhere in Nevada. And there's definitely a ton of horses out here. This is going to be, I believe, the second lowest point of the whole journey, just up ahead. It's starting to get pretty warm mid-afternoon, but it's not terrible. I'm not chugging water or anything. Sweating a little bit. Anyway, gonna cross over to a new canyon slash drainage just up ahead here at that low point of 6,300 feet or so. And from there, it's a very gradual and long, both in terms of distance and elevation gain, ascent to the ridge near Mount Moriah. To get to that new drainage up which we're ascending, we have to get down here. The road, though, can't handle whatever's down there in that dry wash, and has to bypass it a considerable ways, so just gonna shortcut it here. When this basically meets the next major drainage, I'll be turning up that one. Been sneezing a lot lately, just as my state becomes one of the worst affected by COVID-19 in the country. Do you think this is an adequate self-quarantine location? I'm now firmly into the canyon system. And here's the drainage. I'm ascending all the way up high, 10,000 feet. Probably see water along the way. We'll begin to see things blooming the higher up we go as well. Still toast down here around 6,000 to 6,500. Kinda April through June would be more your season here in terms of spring wildflowers. This is certainly preferred mountain lion territory. Got a moss wall here for the Nevada bryologists. We got some Petrophytum right there too. Looks like it might be done. We'll find it fresher higher up, I'm sure. It's a desert mat in the rosaceae. This moss wall. Spread out. Doesn't look like a rose, but yeah, hopefully we'll see some fresh flowers higher up. It likes limestone cliffs, hence why it's here. Some modern day rock art. Jeez, we've really deteriorated since our ancestors 10, 20,000 years ago to that crap. Really? That's a far cry from what the Paiutes can do. Continues to mostly just be Atroplex, Artemisia, Pinyon, and Juniper. So that's why we haven't really stopped and looked at much yet, vegetation-wise. So that's all the bottoms are really comprised of so far. Upwards of 8,000 feet now in the canyon. Pinyon-juniper zone is starting to yield to more mesic coniferous elements. Some kind of fir or Doug fir there. Don't really feel like walking up there and wasting time right now. Kind of trying to get to the ridge top by the end of walking today. I think there's going to be a full moon, so I may walk for an hour. Basically a road the whole way as far as I understand, and should send right up to the ridge top. Meet up with Mount Moriah tomorrow morning via the ridge. Still quite arid though, mostly sagebrush bottom, although those are starting to get quite large. They're a lot scrubbier lower down. These are starting to look like some old growth ones. Gorgeous. I love when they're so tall. One's taller than me. Means they've been thriving for a while. Usually in washes when you see them that big, because they're getting some kind of supplemental underground water. Look at how big that one is. Wow. It's an old growth. Grove of sagebrush. Grove of the patriarchs right here. And the matriarchs. Suddenly the dry pinyon juniper forest, sagebrush, ephedra, etc., becoming more of a cold steppe, and different taxa starting to appear like Symphoricarpus, Castellea. heuchera. Just saw some carry-offs too. So things are starting to pick up above 8,000 feet. Looking forward to a cool night in those upper forests. It's been a long time. Look at all these antenarias on the fruit. It's a very interesting interface. So down the dry canyon bottom we've got basically a monoculture of Artemisia tridentata. On the north facing slope there's a bunch of mesic conifers. On the south facing slope got the arid adapted conifers and lots of dry soil adapted Cercocarpus. Plenty of Cercocarpus on that slope too, but it's quite dominant on the drier slope. Ephedras on the south slope even. It's pretty amazing because we're getting closer to 9,000 feet right about now. We've got some serious woodlands ahead, don't we? That damp, dark woodland on the left, on the north. Got arid shrublands on the right, on the south. It's a boreal forest. This is great. I love sleeping in cold forests. During the summer, that is, not in the winter. It's exceptional in that it appears to basically be a monoculture of firs. You don't see dense stands like this in Colorado, for example, of just abies. So this is pretty weird. You know, I bet there's some pseudo-tugas mixed in there actually. There's definitely some white pines starting to appear here and there. It's mostly fir. All the way up the slope. Common name is curl-leaf mountain mahogany. Of the mountains, but not of the mahoganies. Should always be reminded. One thing Nevada basically lacks, at least these days, it seems to be naturally, is bears. But you have to wonder in a place like this if they could still hang on here. You know, there's not a lot of high elevation berries for them to eat, so I think that has something to do with it. Not a lot of members of the Ericaceae, for example. Although I really do hope we run into at least one or two on this trip. So what may appear superficially to be an alpine zone I just broke into from the boreal forest, it's actually something quite different. It's a uniquely Nevada phenomenon, perhaps. It does occur in White Mountains of California and surely in Utah and such, but Nevada, you get the high mountain sagebrush steppe. Look how dense and rich it is. It's a lot different than the lower sagebrush habitats. It's a lot richer. It has a lot more coldland taxa. Got pseudostellaria here, for example. The sagebrush steppe. Got saxifrages. So it's quite a special ecosystem of northern Nevada, kind of the middle elevations. So higher than this, we might get white bark pine forests, might get extensive bristlecone forests, and even get more mesic forests. So it's not like this just goes into the alpine zone from here. It's distinct. It's middle to higher elevation, but certainly not alpine. Unlike the lower sagebrush habitats, the Mojave, for example, or where it's mixed with atroplex, the Great Basin, there's water on the sagebrush steppe. Not a lot, but it's not uncommon to have a creek crossing, if only a small one, or to happen upon a spring in the sagebrush steppe. It holds snow late into the year. If this had been a big snow year, we'd be seeing snow piles still melting out on the north faces, which of course would ease my load in terms of water carrying burden and cause a richer bloom to occur. So it goes. Not every year can be wet. I have even seen such co-lineages on the sagebrush steppe as tall boreal delphiniums, larkspurs, and aconitums, monkszoods. I've seen columbines on the sagebrush steppe. I've seen irises on the sagebrush steppe. And there's lots of aspens on the sagebrush steppe. Ain't that wonderful? Almost looks like a lithophragma or a pseudostellaria until you take a second glance. Realize you're looking at Silene on the sagebrush steppe. I've seen mertensias. I've seen dodecatheons. And I've seen ranunculus on the sagebrush motherfucking steppe. You can realize all your hopes and dreams on the Sagebrush Steppe. You know what else can happen on the steppe? That the moon can keep you up awake. That's quite the steppe. Limestone exposures and everything. Goodness gracious. Obviously, it was a beautiful day today. Beautiful 4th of July. A day of revelry. You can imagine when there's a thunderstorm, when there's the occasional snowstorm, blizzard, if you will. That this place gets freaking crazy. You can bet your ass that this is a crazy place. Okay, that is certain. Think about Siberia, think about Wyoming, and then you're there. Excited to wake up with cold water for once, because it's already pretty chilly. I do not sleep well in wind, so I need to walk quite a ways to the next big grove, which is totally great. There's a gentle road here along a gentle ridge with a full moon coming up. I'm down for an hour or two.